Hello, everyone, and welcome to Responding to Reviews Builds Trust with Your Candidates by Glassdoor and Thomas International. I'm Katie Williams, and I'm the Marketing Programs Manager here at Glassdoor, and I'm really excited to be here today. We have some great content. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. All lines are muted, so please be sure to ask questions in the questions and answer panel at the right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end of the session. And if we can move to the next slide, I just want to introduce our speakers. Great. So our first speaker here is Lisa Holden. So Lisa is the Employer Engagement Manager here at Glassdoor, and she's spent the better part of a decade really helping technology companies develop their employer brand. So she's going to kind of take it away and talk to us all about how your employer brand really matters and how to respond to reviews to really build that candidate trust. And then next we have Martin Reed. He's the CEO at Thomas International. He's actually, if you can go to the next slide. Oh, yep, he's there. Okay, perfect. He has been working at Thomas International for about 23 years, really helping companies, helping individuals, teachers, students understand themselves better than they currently do. And he's actually worked in sales and marketing. He has background in real estate. He's really a really hands-on business leader who's really driven and helped Thomas International and its clients to survive in these tough times. So I want to hand it over to Martin, and he's kind of going to take it away and tell you a little bit about Thomas International's story. If you don't mind taking it away, Martin.
No problem. Thanks very much indeed. I appreciate you all attending, and we'll try and keep it as brief and as helpful as we possibly can. And yes, that is an incredibly colourful shirt for those who saw me live. Thomas has been around for 33 years, and ultimately we've been in the business-to-business space. We tend to, just from a background point of view, we're in the behavioral, personality, psychometric kind of assessment kind of space. More recently, we've kind of moved into education and sport, but fundamentally what you can see from here is that we operate in a lot of countries. So if you go on to the next slide. Yeah, 33 years, 60 countries, 56 languages is where we've been operating. And the key thing for me is around providing feedback and helping provide self-awareness to a whole range of different kind of groups of people. We operate, obviously, with a range of local consultants, about 350 around the world. Here in the UK, which is where I'm currently sitting, we have about 50 local fully employed sales consultants who work with me, and a further 78 who work across the other parts of the business, and in the rest of the world, about a further 500. So we're kind of an SME-sized business, and the key thing there is ultimately our clients seem to like us. So, next slide. Currently have about 250,000 trained users who ultimately have been using our tools. About 32,000 clients currently using Thomas in the 60 languages that we operate in. Probably 80% of those, it's quite important to kind of stress, are typically small to medium companies, and ultimately that's where we kind of are helping. And we profile about 1.5 million people a year. So that's a little bit about me and my company, and I'll talk briefly a little bit later about my story within Glassdoor and why I'm on this kind of session today, because I found it incredibly valuable.
Perfect, and that brings us to our agenda. Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Holden. As Katie mentioned, I help companies here at Glassdoor sort of develop their brand. I sit in the communications department, and my role as employer engagement manager is to really help people think about how their brand is being perceived on Glassdoor and how to join the conversation that's already happening about them. So I hope I can bring some of that expertise or information to you today, this afternoon. Very quickly, our agenda today, we're going to go over why it's important to respond to reviews and kind of who should do that and how often, a couple of do's and don'ts to follow when responding to reviews, and of course a Glassdoor overview so you know what this site is about and how long we've been around and all of that great background information, and then quickly how to get started. So let me dive in. Why should you respond to reviews? Responding to a review is sort of the first opportunity opportunity you have to connect with a candidate in many cases. We know after surveying our own users that about 46% of Glassdoor members read reviews before speaking with a company or person in charge of hiring. So that means that they haven't really begun their job search yet. They likely haven't spoken with anyone at your company, so they're relying on the reviews as their first point of contact to understand who you are as a business. And you can rely on those reviews to tell the story for you, or you can use the Glassdoor functionality to, for free, respond to those reviews and add your employer voice, so that maybe that first impression is the review, but the second impression is you responding to that and adding your own take on it. So another thing I always address up front is everyone wants to get rid of the bad reviews, but that's sort of an old or outdated way of thinking. You know, we find that bad reviews aren't necessarily a bad thing. We know that 95% of consumers actually suspect censorship or faked reviews when they don't see bad ones. So you actually need a mix. You need a handful of bad reviews to show that your brand is really authentic, and that you're a real company, because nobody's perfect. Everybody has things to work on. So who should respond to reviews? This can be anyone who is in a position to speak on your company's behalf. This may include your CEO, PR, marketing, and HR. But what we find is if there's a review up about a specific department or a specific person within a department, that's a great opportunity for the department head to jump in and address that review specifically. So, for example, an interview candidate leaves a review saying they had a great experience and they were happy to meet the team, but the receptionist was rude to them, and that sort of put a bad taste in their mouth. You know, this is a great moment for the head of operations, perhaps, to respond with a quick thanks for the feedback and maybe more information about how that issue specifically will be addressed, or why it's not an issue anymore, perhaps. More specifics on how to do that in a moment. But you should also note that anyone within the company who does respond to reviews as an employer representative will have his or her title appear next to that employer response. So that's why it's really important to get as specific as possible whenever you can. How often should you respond? Well, 90% of job seekers find the employer perspective useful. So that means responding is a great thing, and it's something that not only is good for your brand and good for that kind of first impression, but it's also something job seekers actively want. They're actively searching for that, and they're finding it very useful. So the answer is as often as possible. But I know that's not realistic for everyone. Setting up some kind of schedule is always helpful. So whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, setting yourself a little reminder to just go in and see if there's any new reviews and see which ones you should respond to is a really helpful exercise to get kind of in the habit of, because it shows that you care. And you can also set alerts within your Glassdoor free employer account to make sure that you are getting pings every time that you get a new review, so you know when to go there and respond to it. All right, so now I'm going to dive into a couple of do's and don'ts to follow when responding to reviews. So when you're thinking about actually jumping in and responding to them, these are a couple kind of key things to keep in mind. The first one is be prompt, and don't think it can wait. I mean, we all know in this world of 24/7 connectivity, response time is tightly tied to value perception. In fact, 71% of consumers who experience a quick and effective brand response on social media are likely to recommend that brand to others. And that is actually in comparison to only 19% of customers who do not receive a quick response. So, you know, you can fill a recommendation gap from 19% to 71% simply by setting that time to respond to reviews promptly. You know, and what you're saying to everyone is, I care about this, this is a priority for me, and that's sort of a proof point for you to prove that you care, and encourage people to recommend you as an employer and see you as an employer who cares about this kind of thing. So it's definitely worth putting your time in. Tip number 2 is say thank you. This seems so simple, but it is so important that I like to reiterate it as many times as I can throughout this webinar. Saying thank you is everything. New research shows that companies with recognition programs are highly effective at improving employee engagement, and they actually see 31% lower voluntary turnover than their peers with an ineffective recognition program. And this totally makes sense. We've surveyed our own users, and we found that companies could keep half of their employee base longer simply by saying thank you, which is a tremendous amount. I mean, just saying the words thank you makes someone want to stay longer at your company. And this is a huge problem. 83% of organizations suffer from a deficit in recognition, and that's according to a recent Burson by Deloitte study. So, we're seeing that there's not enough thank you going on. We're seeing that saying thank you makes a huge difference in retention. And if you're utilizing Glassdoor as a platform to thank people simply for their feedback, you're doing that in a very public forum where not only can your current employees see that you're publicly thanking them, but your prospective talent can see that as well. So tip number 3 is do address specific issues and don't change the subject. So, this is so important. Let's say in more than one review on your Glassdoor profile, you've noticed people are sort of addressing the problem of work-life balance. If you go in there from the employer perspective and you respond with something like, thanks so much for your feedback, our compensation rates are actually much higher than our competitors on average. It's so obvious that you're skirting the issue, and that's not something you want to do, because in this public forum, people can see the complaint that was made, they can see the response that was given, and if the response doesn't address the issue, it's just so it can hurt feelings for the people who gave the complaint in the first place, and it's such a clear message that you are an employer who ignores the issue. So don't be afraid to address something that's wrong, and say either simply confirm it's an issue you're working on, or this is a great opportunity to update your readers and tell them what has been fixed or what is currently being fixed. So, if you're seeing a bad review complaining about some member of management that wasn't doing their job properly, let everyone know what's changed. That person is no longer here. Or perhaps you just implemented a new management training program that is correcting some of these issues. And this is very important because, as I said earlier, nobody is perfect. Negative reviews provide the opportunity for authenticity, and don't be afraid to be authentic. I mean, think about when you, if anyone uses Yelp when you are deciding on a restaurant, you're not expecting that perfect dining experience. You're looking at peer reviews to find out what you can live with and what's going to be exceptional, and you're making a choice as a diner based on what you want specifically. And this is a job seeker's opportunity to do that. And they're making a choice about an employer, knowing that there are going to be both pros and cons, and simply wanting to know what those are before they make a decision. And even negative reviews provide an employer with an opportunity to show that authenticity and simply show that they care about their employees by responding to those negative reviews. Which leads perfectly into my next tip, which is be authentic. Do not auto-respond, ever. It is so clear if you just copy-paste the thank you for your feedback. So please do not do that, ever. This is, when you're authentic, you're setting expectations up front. You're sounding like a human. And, consumers today, they're used to reading reviews. They know a canned response when they see one. So you never want to automatically respond to any bad review or any complaint with something like, none of that's true. Everything at this company is completely perfect, and we're just an exceptional place to work. That does you a disservice, and it certainly does that job seeker a disservice, because what happens is your new hires end up with buyer's remorse. And we have surveyed our users to find out that more than half, 61% of employees, say that new job realities differ from expectations set during the interview process. So that means that the employer exaggerated the pros, didn't talk about the cons, and when the employee started on the first day or the first week, that person found that this wasn't what they signed up for. And what happens then? Either you have an employee that's dissatisfied and is not good for morale, or you have an employee who quits and you have to begin the process all over again, which we know is expensive and we know is incredibly time consuming. So my last tip, tip number 5, is to recognize the pros and the cons, and don't forget the positive. Negative reviews might be your priority, and that's understandable. Negative reviews can be upsetting. So there's something that you feel emotion about and you want to respond to right away. But don't ignore those positive reviews. There are messages there that directly indicate the things your company is doing right, that, by the way, you should be highlighting elsewhere. If you see a review that says your company is the best place someone has ever worked, you should tweet that. You should pop that into your careers page and share that everywhere, because it's great fodder from a very authentic source. So don't forget the positive, and make sure to showcase that positive, because it's such a great description of your brand without you having to come up with the messaging yourself. This is your true employee voice, so don't forget to share it. All right, so now just a couple kind of housekeeping tips and tricks for before you respond. This tip is check for any typos, and what I suggest here is that you write your response into a Word document before you post it on Glassdoor, so that you have a chance to check it before it is public. And that's great to catch spelling errors and grammar and all of that. But I find that this is a very helpful tip for employers, because when you get a review and you have an emotional reaction to it, it's a really great time to calm down and not respond right away. So putting a review in a Word document first gives you a chance to breathe. It gives you a chance to type out that response, inhale and exhale, and really decide, okay, is this something that I'm responding to because I'm upset, or is this something I'm responding to add the employer voice? And check your response to make sure it is in fact in your employer voice, and it's not something that you want to respond to because you're upset. We have done this webinar in the past, and one thing we've said is that if it feels good to respond, if you feel like you've really got that person, that's a large red flag that you should take a step back and think about your response a little more. So my next tip is make sure your job title is correct. As I said earlier, within your free employer account, when you sign up with your work email to speak on behalf of your company, we will ask for your title. And make sure this is correct, because it will appear alongside any employer responses to reviews that you add yourself. So multiple people at your company can have a free employer account, and they should log in with their own titles so that you can have different individuals at your company responding to different reviews as needed. And choose those company leaders to respond. So like I said, we suggest HR, PR, marketing, other departments, department heads to respond to reviews, and you should also note that only one employer response per review is permitted. So with that, I will hand it over to Martin Reed, the CEO of Thomas International, and take it away, Martin.
Fantastic. Thanks so much indeed. Yeah, I think it's kind of quite important for those who perhaps came on a couple of minutes later of just who Thomas is. Thomas is in the space of assessment, psychometric testing, personality profiling. We're generally in the business-to-business space, but also more recently in education, and also, as of next month, sports. And we operate with about 32,000 customers in 60 countries. And most of our tools are translated into local language as well. So, next slide. I think, being a CEO, when I first came into this, I think it's quite important not to take yourselves too seriously and remember that actually companies don't succeed. It's actually the people that do. We have an emotional intelligence assessment that I use a lot myself internally, and it's I think this has been used many times before, but it's such true that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, and that's why it's really important that as part of the feedback process, which I think is what Glassdoor is there to do, it really is there to kind of identify and validate, as a business owner, as a business leader, actually how and what we're doing as a company to really embrace these things. We have a range of engagement tools as well that we have. But up to Glassdoor, to be fair, in the UK, it's more of a startup than it is in the States. And I came in the process about a year ago, having my first experience of Glassdoor, and just didn't realize the impact of what they do, because ultimately it was a bit of a secret society where you've got people, as Lisa was saying, who are coming in and doing a kind of behind the scenes check of who you are as a kind of company. And unless you take this seriously, you're actually missing out on at least part of the equation. So the next slide basically shows ultimately where we were coming back to September last year, I think. So the review process, we had a handful of reviews back then. There's been a couple in India, a couple in Canada, a couple in the UK when I first kind of registered within the Glassdoor environment, and really did nothing with it. Ignored it, put it down to, they don't get me, they don't get the company, they don't see our values, and didn't realize really ultimately that Glassdoor was going to be something that we should be taking seriously. So as a slow developer myself, it kind of got me through till probably March or April of this year, that we actually proactively started to look at the reviews, respond to the reviews professionally, and actually starting to, also within the business, taking some of the comments that ultimately come from those reviews and actually starting to validate whether or not they were fair. And to be fair, almost every review that we had, both positive and negative, was a real reflection of actually what the company was feeling, both either morale-wise or how we were performing. So I think it was a really great way of having a barometer of actually how we were doing as a business. So that's kind of showing you the kind of the last kind of 12 months. Okay, and this kind of again demonstrates just one of the good stroke things you need to be aware of if you're going to put yourself up as CEO and chairman, that I ultimately am. This isn't a popularity stake. This isn't about me. It's about how people within my business, which ultimately often are anonymous, are rating me and how I'm doing my job. So I can't influence these things specifically. What I can do is ensure the fact that my values that I feel very strong about are really being communicated. And it allowed me to reinforce to the company, and I suppose my clients, our clients, ultimately the importance of our values. So the UK conference in January, we went through that, and I shared my vision and talked about the values that we uphold, and almost every day of every week I continue to reinforce that. And I think part of that was around Glassdoor, ultimately reminding me just the importance of actually what people's views are about we as a business and how we're doing. And this just gives you some statistics of a year ago, where we were. There's been a couple of reviews on salaries. We had a number of reviews. I think that number of 24 was actually wrong. We probably had at the time about 10 reviews going back a year ago. And this is where we are kind of currently. A number of photos have been added, awards, interviews. And these were some of the ones from a year ago, people saying, Thomas, not a bad place to work, training is good, but ultimately within the middle management structure, we had some issues. And to be fair, we had. And ultimately, we've made changes around that. So, ultimately, as a CEO, I found it really helpful just to kind of validate, externally whether or not these perceptions were reality or not, and often they are. So I started to respond to these. And I agree with what Lisa was saying, is sometimes you do need to count to 10. I own this business, I'm CEO, it's a family-run business. It's very difficult when somebody's criticizing your family, your baby, your child, to kind of deal with it in a professional manner. But Thomas is all around being honest and about transparency and about giving feedback. And once you actually recognize the importance of saying thank you, and I think it's actually quite relevant, by the way, we did a study a couple of months ago about the UK population, about 1 million people in the study. 45% of the UK population have an extroverted profile. So the people saying thank you is incredibly important to those people. The only caveat to that is that ultimately saying thank you, ultimately if it's not sincere, isn't going to work. So I apologize if I'm telling you how to suck eggs, but it's really important that when you're saying thank you, you mean it. Because otherwise you will soon find that it will catch you out, and people like honesty, they like transparency. And here's one of the more recent reviews that was posted about 6 or 8 weeks ago. Again, very positive, reinforcing the message of just being able to say thank you and actually responding to that. I find it kind of quite therapeutic. I don't know who in your business would be best suited to do this. I would always argue it would be the CEO or the MD. So the people who have most to gain from the reviews ultimately are you as the owner-managers of your own company. And however painful it sometimes is for you to receive feedback, it's a bit like a 360 when you actually have a handful of people who are responding in an objective way to their perception of your business. I think the only people who should be really responding are the key people. It's a bit easier for me. I employ less than 500 people. If I was working for Salesforce and I employed 80,000 people and I'm a chief exec and I'm getting 100 reviews a day, it's going to be somewhat harder. So obviously you need to take a more common sense approach to this. But I think for 99% of the UK population in business-wise are SMEs. So I definitely absolutely recommend that it should be the MD, the chief exec, or somebody similar of stature who can do that. Something else which I also found really helpful about providing, I suppose, our candidates who are coming through the process was around recognizing that Glassdoor have created an open company environment. So we actually promote on our own homepage the fact that we actually have a registration. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing well. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing poorly. It just means that ultimately here in Thomas, I believe in transparency, is that we are prepared to share and promote and encourage candidates that are coming through the interviewing process to actually read the reviews and, warts and all, see actually how we're doing as a company. And I think it's a really great way of supporting the fact that you are transparent as a company. I suppose the big if was, why bother? And I suppose when I came in middle part of last year is I hadn't realized even that 86 people a month were actually going onto the Glassdoor site, searching Thomas International, and actually having a view of what our employees and our ex-employees thought of us, so that I had no opportunity to even engage with those kind of people. And as you can see, as I started to become more engaged in the process and started to promote the openness and transparency that Glassdoor is doing, we've actually had more and more people coming through to the website, which I think highlights the fact that it's a really great vehicle, particularly if you're hiring people. And obviously in the war for talent, which is obviously heating up, you're going to have candidates who are going to go to maybe 2 or 3 different companies, and then they maybe wanting to go for a job with one of those 3. I hope that ultimately within Thomas, if they had 3 similar jobs with 3 similar salaries, they're going to come to Thomas, because you can see that we are a company that embraces that area around feedback and transparency. And we're now receiving 700, 800,000 kind of people per month who are actually actively searching Thomas International within that process. So if you don't think it's an issue, if you don't think that Glassdoor is a problem, particularly if you have reviews which you're feeding back to, you should be aware. I don't know what your own statistics will be, and it's very easy. Glassdoor offer a free service for you to actually go in and register and actually see for yourself the reviews of others, and obviously whoever you decide to actually give feedback, it could be up and running within a few minutes. But if you look back from where we were a year ago to where we are now, the company is different. The reason why the reviews are increasing isn't the fact that we're manipulating the data. It's not that I'm sending through to all of my best staff, please write a review. This is all down to just being more proactive, recognizing that Glassdoor exists. Most of the people who actually have done this have been new to Thomas. I've recruited about 35 new people in the last 18 months. They already get this stuff. I necessarily may not have done, which is why it's really important, I think, that this is an ongoing basis. And I'm sure we're going to get some poor reviews along the way. Our company isn't perfect. We do many things right, but we do a number of things wrong. As long as we continue, as I see my company as being a work in progress, I'll continue to keep supporting Glassdoor. I think they're a great organization. I found them incredibly helpful and proactive. They're very engaged about helping us recruit the right people. They've also been incredibly helpful around the employee branding stuff. So, for somebody who's only really, I suppose the last 6 months, worked with Glassdoor, I find them a great company to work for, and it gives them a great insight for me of working with them. What good looks like and promotes transparency. So that's all I have to say, really. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it useful, and I'll hand over to Lisa.
Well, thank you, Martin. What kind words. You're making us blush. So just quickly, how to get started with your free employer account. As Martin said, you're up and running in just a couple of minutes. You simply visit employers.glassdoor.com and click the orange button for sign up for your free employer account. Make sure that you use your work email when you sign up, which will verify to us that you actually work there, and give us a little bit of information about yourself, and you're quickly up and running. And once there, you have some functionality to play with. So you can set up company alerts, which will alert you every time you get a new review posted on Glassdoor, and you can set those to occur as they happen. You can get them on a weekly basis, or set what works for you. You can also flag reviews. So if you ever feel that a review does not meet our community guidelines, you can flag it to go back into our review process, and our content team will have another look at it. You can also monitor your reputation. So we offer some free insights and analytics to help you understand how your profile is being viewed, how often it's being viewed, and by what demographics. You can also get a sense of your reputation by looking at reputation word clouds, which basically break down the most used words in the pros section of your reviews and the most used words in the cons section of your reviews. So really breaking down what's bubbling up to the top as the things you're best at, and bubbling up to the top the things you need to work on. This helps you identify areas for improvement. And once you have that free employer account, if you're the first one at your company to have one, you can invite others to join that employer account from your company. So simply click invite colleagues, and you can invite others to respond to reviews that maybe pertain to them. Quickly on Glassdoor. So we are delivering measurable results to our 2,000 plus customers. They use Glassdoor's talent solutions to really attract higher quality talent at a much lower cost per hire. So we're seeing 2x the quality and 3 times the influence, and that's compared to company profile pages on LinkedIn. 3 times is the average. We've seen as much as 10x influence in comparison to those LinkedIn profiles. It really just depends on the company and where your kind of talent is being sourced from. And on average, we show clients about a 30% lower cost per hire when they sign up to use Glassdoor solutions. So I think we are a little bit ahead of schedule, but hopefully that's a good thing for everyone. And Katie, did we get any questions during this presentation?
We did. Okay, we did. Thank you guys so much for listening. We got a few questions about the free versus the paid portion of Glassdoor. Lisa, do you mind kind of talking about that you can still respond to reviews with the free account and kind of what else you get?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the free employer account is basically a way to give you basic access to everything Glassdoor offers, and the paid versions essentially just give you more depth, more rich data and information. So with the free employer account, you have the ability to flag reviews for re-review by our content team. You have the ability to respond to reviews, and you have access to what we call our employer center. So this is where you can log in and you see basic demographic info about the visitors to your profile. So you'll see who's visiting your profile based on where they are located, what their job titles currently are, and what other companies they're looking at on Glassdoor. So after they look at your profile, which companies are they comparing you to? You also get your company rating breakdown over time. So you'll be able to see the slide that Martin showed, which showed the uptick in his visitation and rating over time. You'll be able to see how many folks were visiting your profile over the past few months, and how your rating has changed in the past few months, and how your CEO rating has changed. With the paid versions, you essentially get much more data. So you'll be able to dive in deeper. You can slice and dice this data a little bit more. If you advertise your jobs on Glassdoor, which is what many companies do when they enhance their profile, you'll be able to get a breakdown of how your jobs are performing across the site and things like that. So if you're interested in chatting more about our paid services, of course, you can respond to Katie's email and she will set you up with a demo.
Yep,
Can I just
definitely.
add there as well, is Martin, that I found the whole process really easy. I came in and started to work within the reviews on the free version, but then ultimately saw the value and actually upgraded to the kind of paid version. And we've got currently about 25 jobs that we're kind of posting around the kind of world. But I think the great thing is, particularly if you're working with small and medium organizations, is you may not have the opportunity to kind of create a candidate experience and therefore kind of create an area within your own website that actually allows you to display all that's great about your organization. And you sometimes forget when you're kind of at the coalface about actually what a great company you are and sharing some of that information. So actually building within the kind of candidate area your own kind of mini website around attracting and retaining employees was a really, really inexpensive tool for us. We've got real value from it.
Great. Okay, so I have a couple more questions. One is, in which countries is Glassdoor most utilized, Lisa?
So currently, we started in the U.S., and so the U.S. is sort of our base. Most of our customers are here. We see that about 25% of our traffic is international. So we have a presence in 190 countries, meaning that people in those countries have posted information about what it's like to work at their companies. So we are an international company with international presence. We recently opened Glassdoor UK, Glassdoor Australia, Glassdoor Canada, and Glassdoor India. So definitely growing at a rapid rate, but the base is here in the U.S., and that's where most activity is.
And just a reminder, as a small medium company here in the UK, is 1,000 people a month are currently reviewing Thomas websites. As a medium-sized organisation is, however big Glassdoor is in the UK is, it certainly has the traction from candidates who are looking to use these kind of reviews.
Great. Okay, and a couple more questions. And keep your questions coming. We have a little bit of time. This one is, if I'm helping a smooth exit of a departing employee, then can I ask him or her to write a positive review for us on Glassdoor?
I'm so glad someone asked this. So you are always more than welcome to encourage employee feedback. What I would shy away from is asking someone to write a positive review. So it's a fine line to walk. You don't want to talk to an employee and say, please write something good about us. It feels forced. So if you approach the employee rather with language like, please tell us what your experience was like here. Glassdoor is a really great platform for us to get this authentic, anonymous feedback in a way that makes you feel comfortable, and it gives us access to how you really feel.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I mean, one of your slides was around authenticity. No company is the Mary Poppins of employment. Nobody is perfect in any way at all, and we and no other company is the same as. I think I saw one of our competitors had actually, after a handful of poor reviews on Glassdoor, the MD had actually written to the staff saying, please do some positive stuff. It had such a negative impact. I mean, it's not a great thing to do, and surprisingly enough, you had more and more poor reviews coming through than positive reviews. That company is a great company to work for. I know them very well, but ultimately trying to manipulate the information isn't going to work either. Exactly. It's like a TripAdvisor review process. People will see through it.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that. And it is tricky. I mean, not everyone has a degree in communications. It is hard to relay that message in the right way, and make sure your employees know that what you want is authentic feedback. So Glassdoor actually has templates for this. If you visit employers.glassdoor.com and click Managing Reviews, you will have access to a template email that we've drafted for you that basically explains what Glassdoor is and why reviews are so helpful. And you're welcome to use that and send it out to your employee base to encourage feedback.
Great. I have another question here. How do you suggest getting your CEO or upper management on board to responding to reviews? I don't know which one of you want to answer that. But...
I mean, I can answer that. The person who is paid to make sure the company is successful is the CEO, and your brand is all around the leadership that you actually have at the top of that organization. And if they need to be sold to the value of why these things are important is, I have to question their abilities to be fulfilling that role as CEO and chairman or MD or whoever else is, because it's all about, you've got two different customers. You've got the customers internally, which are your employees, and you have all those organizations that ultimately, as Glassdoor becomes more successful here in the UK or around the world is, you'll start potentially finding clients who you're working with starting to go to Glassdoor to see whether or not if they're going to use Thomas International or another competitor, because ultimately they'll be able to see whether or not one is transparent and one is actually a good place to work and trustworthy, or not, as the case may be. So I think it's a very simple process, but you do need to be brave and be prepared to recommend these things, and it may get shot down. But I get this, and most of the chief execs that I would speak to would argue that ultimately there is no other person who should be really, fulfilling that feedback.
Great.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even just showing those basic analytics that you have access to within the free employer account in that employer center will give you some kind of weight to stand on to make your point. So show how your company is doing, show what the current company rating is, show what the current CEO approval rating is, and that should ignite some interest in responding to reviews from the upper management.
Great. I don't know, Lisa, if you know this answer, but someone asked how many companies have profiles in the UK. Do you know that? I don't have
we have about 300,000 companies on site, and like I said, about 25% of our traffic is international. So I don't have an exact number for you, but I'm guessing it's around 20-25% of that. But that's a great question. If you email it, I'm happy to get back to you via email.
Great. Okay, well, looks like that's all the questions we have today. Thank you so much, Martin and Lisa, for a great presentation. And everyone, we'll be sending out the recording and the slides probably later today or tomorrow morning. So please look out for those from Glassdoor. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to email me, katie.williams@glassdoor.com. I'll forward them to the right person. I'll type them right now in the chat box. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.